Welcome to Neighborhood Snapshot and LATV. My name is Bob Sardelli. I am a member of the Leominster Historical Commission. Today we're pleased to welcome to the new spacious LATV studios located at 435 Lancaster Street, the Gateway Business Center, formerly Building 100 of the DuPont Company. We're pleased to welcome four guests: Connie Duval, Muriel Paquin. They are sisters, and their maiden name was Richard. And Jeff Richard and Ken Duval, they are great-grandsons of the original Mr. Richard, and whose name was Paul Richard. And during the little array of photographs was shown at the beginning of this program, I heard, as the pictures came up, I heard some of the family members. It evoked many memories. So there are going to be other photographs that will be part of this program that will be incorporated during and at the end. This should be a very, very interesting interview. We're going to begin with a little biographical information. Connie, when were you born?
I was born in 1925.
1925.
August.
And Muriel?
I was born December 1932.
1932. And both of you were born at the Leominster Hospital?
No.
No, where were you born?
Up in the house.
On the farm. So that's one huge change between now and then, although with midwives now, midwifery or wifery is coming back, and but you were born at home, and that was very, very common then. And Jeff, when were you born?
October of 1956.
1956. And Ken, when were you born?
March of 1951.
1951. And I was born in 1942, so Jeff is the whippersnapper here. And you two fellas and I, we're whippersnappers compared to the ladies. You were born on the farm. What did it look like now? And for the television audience, for people who are familiar with Leominster, who have lived in Leominster for a long time, the Richards farm, they picture the Richards dairy farm up at the top of Sheldon Hill. Elm Street, go up Elm Street, up at the top of the hill. The house and the barn, the house is there, the barn is no longer there.
Right.
When was that house built, the original house, approximately, Jeff?
That was built prior to my great-grandfather buying it. That's got to be early 1800s, late 1700s.
So
there was three houses that were incorporated on Elm Street that we know of.
And so that was, and by the way, the Richards family were the first Richards to pay taxes in Leominster, I was told, in the little
Richard
family. The first Richard family in Leominster to pay taxes. A little
1891.
1891. And where did you get that information? Because you did
Historical Society.
Historical Society in old records and so on.
They have a folder on us down there. Mr. Benoit has been keeping.
So the farm, which I can still picture where the farm was, the house, and the remains of the barn, because I remember that the barn eventually, after the farm, the dairy closed and so on. But now people think of the Richards kennels, and they are still on Elm Street, but you go past where the farm was and around the bend, and there's a beautiful field and the fence and so on, and the kennels are there.
That's where I was raised.
You were raised there.
That was my dad, who was Paul Richard. He was a grandson of the original.
Of the original Paul Richard.
Our brother.
Your brother.
He was the youngest.
Where did the original Paul Richard come from?
Quebec.
Quebec. So French-Canadian, the French-Canadian. And again, an American success story. You know, we are a nation of immigrants, and they came from, did he come originally to Leominster, or?
Mr. Charpentier tells the story. I guess they came,
Louis Charpentier.
when they came down on horse and wagon, they must have came down to this area, whether it's here or Worcester. We're not quite sure. But they were here in the 1870s. And they met a couple girls in Millbury. I know they married in my great-grandfather married your grandmother they knew in 1880.
What was her name, your great-grandmother's name?
Melvina Turini.
Turini. French, again,
Yeah,
French-Canadian, which was, at that time, people pretty much stayed within their own national background. When the original Paul Richard got to Leominster finally, did he start the dairy farm right away?
No.
I don't think so.
What did he,
He worked at the brick factory
now you mentioned
at Osborne's.
Osborne.
The name of it.
Birch Street in Leominster, which intersects with Elm Street. At the top, there was a brick factory where bricks were made. And people familiar with Leominster now, if you go down to that section of Morse Hollow, at the top of Birch Street, apparently that's where that was where the bricks were made in that area. And a number of those houses that still exists are brick houses, probably from the bricks that were made right on site.
The well is on
right
my
there.
property. I have property from the farm, and the well that fed that brick factory the spring was plugged. It's on the side of Elm Street right there.
And gravity feed, right?
Oh, and it still flows. They had to do some water correction up there because of it.
When you girls were kids, what did that area look like? Today, it's a beautiful area, and it's still rural, but there are houses, and there are more houses coming in.
Very few houses.
But when you were girls, what was it like?
Whole Street, Elm Street?
Yes.
Very few homes.
It was really this. It was. Would it be
Dirt roads.
Dirt
Famous
road.
roads, no tar.
Very
no tar?
few cars.
What was it? An event when a car came by?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
It was,
Everybody
right?
would wave.
You'd wave, right? And now probably when cars go by, you go, oh, wait. Where I live on Pleasant Street, when I first moved up there were fewer cars. Now there are a lot more cars. But I mean, the road was paved and everything. It was modern times when but you remember the era of dirt roads.
Oh, yes.
What was the transportation like? I mean, you girls didn't ride around in horse and buggy.
No.
In fact, with the dairy, once it became a dairy farm, there must have been a delivery truck.
Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's how
They
you learn
delivered
to
milk
drive.
every day, yeah.
Delivered milk every day,
Yeah.
and that was one of the many dairy farms at the time in Leominster. So Ken and Jeff, can you tell us something, and we'll get back to that interesting. And I want to know how Muriel, how did you learn to drive? I want to find out in a minute. But what about the dairy farms? There are no dairy farms in Leominster now, and I know there's one in Lunenburg. Ken, it's
Right, Cherry Hill
Cherry
Farm.
Hill, and Lunenburg used to have lots of dairy farms.
Right.
What happened?
Cumberland Farms?
Cumberland Farms, but there are hardly any farms of any kind in Leominster, let alone dairy farms. But Richards was the last dairy farm in Leominster.
In Leominster. That delivered milk and, produced milk.
And when so you produced the milk
Had
from
your own dairy.
own herd of cows. How many?
50 to 60 cows.
50 to 60
Yep.
cows. Ladies, did you ever milk the cows?
No,
I tried it once.
that wasn't our job.
That wasn't your job. We'll get back to your job later. But I imagine just before the dairy went out, you had the milking machines and everything. But
Oh, yeah.
do you fellas remember milking the cows
Oh,
by
yeah.
hand?
Of course. No.
Well, we've done it. we had to do it, you know, because as a kid, you went up and said, how does this work by hand, you know? And my uncle would show me and all of us, you know, how to start from the top with your fingers and work them down and pull at the same time, you know?
So,
There was an art to it, you know?
But it was a modern dairy eventually before.
Right. Oh, it was-
And did you pasteurize your own milk? You know, you processed your own milk
Yes.
and so on, and so it was a big operation.
Yep.
And throughout the city, what were some of, just for the historical, what were some of the other dairy farms in Leominster that people might remember? Some of the other names.
You had Fry's,
Guys.
Fry's. I remember Fry's Dairy.
you had
Newton.
LaFave's,
Newton.
over on
What was the name?
Prospect Street.
We bought that one just before Freddie. Freddie sold out his cows, and I forget what the name of that dairy was, but it's Freddie
Crescent.
LaFave's. Crescent Ridge.
Crescent,
Crescent Dairy. That's
On Prospect Street.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, they
Is
had
that, so that's pretty, is that near where the Skyview Middle School
Right.
is?
Exactly.
In that area?
Before,
Right.
yeah.
You know, I remember getting hay where the school is up, Samoset School is. What was up there? You remember getting hay up there?
That'd be Cherries, wouldn't it?
Cherries.
Cherries.
Right.
Cherries Dairy, yeah. There were,
Tuttle's was up there too.
Yeah.
Tuttle's.
Tuttle's.
Tuttle's
right.
Farm.
Yeah, they
So there
were
were
up there.
so
Yeah.
many,
Yeah.
so many farms and dairy farms and so on. So it was an actual, it was a working dairy. And that's sad that era has, you know, passed.
I don't know. You know, I try to tell my kids, you know, on school days when it snowed, I would prefer that we went to school.
Because it was, okay, you got a day off. And Pepe would call and say, okay, let's move some hay. You know? And we were all, well, I was the oldest of the grandsons. So it was, you know, I started working when I was about 10, 11 years old in the dairy. And then I went to help my Uncle Gene and Uncle Paul in the barn, milking the cows. And I more or less grew up right there.
Right,
Yeah.
on the dairy
His
farm.
uncle used to come and knock in the window 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning.
Both
"Kenny,
of them.
I need you.
That's when the help didn't show up.
Yeah.
You know, the help from downtown. We don't know where they were, but
Yeah.
Wake him up.
So farm life, good healthy life, but hard work.
Yeah.
Hard work and
7 days a week.
7 days a week. 7 days a week.
And
And you
that-
have those animals to take. You know, you have the herd to take care of, the animals, the chores to do. The animals don't know which day of the week
Right.
it is. So
Right.
No.
although we're going to at some point in the interview we're going to have to talk about a very intelligent horse that knew how to stop at a traffic light. But make sure if I forget that we mention that. Getting back, ladies, to Muriel.
Yeah.
How did you learn to drive? You went to driver ed school? and
Oh,
through,
no.
How did you learn to
We
drive?
were allowed to try the tractor, and once we learned to drive the tractor, we could go to the Jeep, which was a truck. And once you get to the Jeep, then you were allowed to go up the street. At that time, there wasn't much traffic. I used to go all the way up to Camp Bartlett's and practice and back. That's how I learned to drive.
With the driver ed
With
teacher
the
right next to you?
Right next to me, no.
No, you alone in the tractor?
Me alone.
In the tractor?
Yeah, and in
So-
the Jeep.
And then in the Jeep. But again, it was a dirt road and there was
No
very
traffic.
little
I
traffic.
don't think I ever met anything
Not like
on the
today.
road. No. I don't know what I would have done if I met any. It was illegal to be out there.
The look of the neighborhood then, today, getting back to that, you know, there are more houses and so on, but in those days, especially when you were girls in the the 20s and in the 30s and then in the 40s, a lot of woods up there now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of woods up there now, but then, was there more pasture? Was it more open?
Oh,
We had
yeah.
fruit trees and pasture land. We needed pasture
The
land.
trees were non-existent in the turn of the century. They started to grow back. That one of the aerial photo from a plane that they took in the early 30s shows the top of Pheasant Run had some tree growth finally showing up.
Yeah, when you, Jeff, I've seen some of those old photographs. When you look at photographs of Leominster 100 years ago, as you said,
Nothing.
no trees. The tops of these hills, which are treed today, are bare because they were pasture land. And,
You know, one of the stories was when my great-grandfather Paul purchased the property up there through a bank in Fitchburg, whatever the name of the bank was. It was for $100 and 5 years of cordwood because he had trees remaining on the property, more than likely, and that's all we're assuming.
yeah, and that I know some other people, woodlots. They'd have a piece of property in the woods, in the forested areas for woodlots, because that was a very important source of heat then. It was you heated your house very often with wood or coal, and now people are starting again to use wood and coal and so on. But then it was the major source of heat because you didn't have electric heat, you didn't have central heating in houses very often. You heated by oil or kerosene. Or I remember on Central Street, we had an oil barrel. And one of my jobs was to go down and my chores was to fill the oil jug and bring it upstairs. We lived on the second floor. And then later on, we got the gas and so on. But, you had indoor space heaters.
Right.
So,
We had that eventually.
you had that eventually.
Yeah.
You did have a phone. The dairy needed a phone. That was one of the
Yeah.
modern conveniences. But what about the cooking and the supplies and things of that sort?
Well, Mom was a
From
great
more-
cook,
Yeah.
and she was working hard every day. And of course, my dad would bring home the groceries. She'd call in on the phone to the grocery man, and
Your
you know,
dad would
my dad
pick up
would
the-
pick up the groceries.
Pick up the groceries.
That's how they started.
Poiriers Market.
Yeah.
It was Poiriers Market. It was
Where was
yeah.
Poiriers Market?
Corner
Because there were no
Fourth.
supermarkets then.
No.
No.
Yeah,
malls, no
Brockman's back then.
Brockleman's downtown.
Yeah, but this happened to be just a little grocery store on the
Yeah.
corner of 4th Street and
Mechanic
Mechanic
Street,
Street.
yeah.
By
On
St.
French Hill.
Cecilia's Nuns Home.
On
Yeah.
French Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was in, I remember before supermarkets, and I remember my neighborhood store was Janelle's Market on Central
Oh,
Street.
yeah,
And I knew
right.
that place
Yeah.
inside out, and Henry and Evelyn, and even,
Yes,
I
yes.
remember old Mr. and Mrs.
Yes.
Janelle and the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that store inside out.
Yeah.
But the neighborhood stores, now we have variety stores and so on, but there were, almost every neighborhood had at least one
Little family store.
family
Yes.
store. So that's been a change. What are some of the other changes that you ladies have? Ken and Jeff and I, pretty much of the same year, although I'm 65, and but so we have that in common. But you've seen a lot of things that we're the whippersnappers.
Too many changes in
Too many changes.
Yeah,
So many.
it's not the same at all, It's in the way traffic is today. You can't even move, and it's getting worse every day.
Yes, because of the population has increased,
Population, yes,
and
it's grown.
and now
houses are being built, and people moving in.
yes, and your family had the truck. In the farm vehicles, but did
Right.
you have a car,
Oh, yes.
family
We
car?
had
Did you
a
have
family
2 or
car.
3 family cars or one?
just one.
One. Nowadays, it's very common that everybody who can drive in the family, even the kids, will have a car. When I was growing up, we had one car, and other people either did or didn't, depending where you lived, did or didn't have a car, and it wasn't a fancy car. It was but now there are so many cars. So
Nobody
that's
stops to take a breath.
nobody stops to take how true.
They can't go outside and enjoy like it was for like Ken and I. I mean, as much of the work that we were doing, we would see how much you could sweat in a day, but it was, you know, it was.
And
it
you
was
were
different.
out there in the fresh air and enjoyable. Now, one of the changes I've seen today, and I'm sure some of the members of our audience probably do this, but I see a lot of people walk today, which is wonderful exercise. They jog. But but they have something tuned into their ear instead of always being tuned in, just enjoying being aware of your surroundings. We didn't have Walkman then. Walkmen are even passe now. I don't know what they call them now.
iPods.
But iPods. Everybody's plugged into all this technology, and then we are missing so much by that. Plus, because of the safety factors on road, you see people walking on the wrong side of the street. Not listening to the traffic coming. So it's changed, and not all those changes are for the better.
Right.
When you ladies went downtown, did you go downtown every day?
Oh, no. Once a week if you
It
were
was a
lucky.
big deal.
Yeah.
And would the bus go by and pick you up?
No,
No.
No bus up there.
bus,
So how did you
no.
get downtown?
we'd walk.
You'd walk.
If we were lucky, if my dad was going on an errand, and we'd get a ride down.
You'd hitch a ride that way.
Yeah.
In a previous interview, one of the, speaking about the bus, the F&L, people got around F&L bus company, but it was feet and legs.
Yeah.
That's how people got around in those days. You walked, and it was good for you. It was good exercise. And you told me at the beginning when we did a little, warm up in the ante room, that you were fortunate. You went to St. Cecilia's School,
Cecilia's.
so you would get a ride. Your dad would give you a ride
To school.
to school.
Yeah.
You must have got to school pretty early in the morning if he was going down on the milk
Yeah,
route.
sometimes you'd have breakfast there with the nuns.
You'd have breakfast with the nuns at St. Cecilia's School
They
because
were
he had to do
there.
his milk route,
Right,
right? So he had to get. He couldn't come back and just pick you up. And then on nice days, and the weather was good, you would walk home to school.
From school, yeah.
And that was,
Many
as Jeff,
times.
that was literally
Yeah. Oh,
uphill because
Oh,
when you
yes.
look and see where St. Cecilia's is,
Yeah.
you really walked uphill. But all the way from St. Cecilia's
Many times.
on Mechanic, many
was 3
times, all
miles
the way
from
up
town.
to Elm Street.
It was
Yeah.
3 miles from town. Now, how far is St.
Yeah.
Cecilia's from town? It was a good walk.
It was a good walk, and it was good for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And I know Jeff and Ken used to.
We took the bus.
You
There
took
you
the
go.
bus.
But we,
They had
from
buses
when I
then.
went to Gallagher Junior High, that was a walk. The hill was tough.
So you would walk from Gallagher all the way up
Yeah.
back
And hope
to
somebody
Town.
was coming by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to give you a ride.
Exactly.
And I do recall walking. I grew up on Central Street, 166 Central Street, and I would walk to Gallagher, and then when I got to high school, I would walk from same place all the way up to Carter, Leominster High, the old Leominster High.
Right.
And then walked to Doyle. You walked everywhere. You walked home. You walked Doyle Field. Here, there, everywhere. People walked, and it was good for us.
Sure.
That's a big
It
change.
didn't
Now,
hurt us.
the busing is
Well,
We would meet
right
at
at your front door.
yes.
We would meet at, what's the street coming up onto Elm Street? We just
Birch.
talked- Birch Street. All the Elm Street people, the kids, we'd all walk to school together when I was going to Leominster High. And that was a fun time because we had a lot of noshing to do, and
Yes.
fun to do.
And then
Yeah.
when you went to now, where did you go? You went
Up to Leominster High.
Leominster
for-
High.
Yeah.
So you went to St. Cecilia's up to what grade?
Up to 8th grade.
grade.
9th grade at
Gallagher.
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 Yeah.
And that's really when so many people in these interviews that I've done, that's when they really started, a big change, and started to meet people from other neighborhoods, other sections of
schools.
Leominster.
Yeah.
You rubbed elbows with
Yeah.
kids from all over town, which was a wonderful thing. And then in high school.
And at that time, we were shy. I was shy at that time. It's rough going in, meeting
Yeah.
all these kids
Yeah.
of all different ethnics. We went with all French people.
Yeah, and then, so it was kind of a little bit of a culture shock.
Yes, it was.
But it wore off,
It
and,
did.
and
It
it's,
did.
it's what America is about.
Exactly.
We are a nation of we're Americans. We're a blend of
Right.
Everybody.
of everybody,
Yeah.
which one of the things is which makes us a unique country and a great country.
Yeah.
You talked about well, like the winter and being outside and so on, and I know Sheldon Hill has that beautiful, that slope. Sliding,
We used
winter
to
sports.
slide toboggan.
Double runner down the
Yeah,
street.
yeah.
You have a long walk back
down-
from the
down
top of the
farm.
farm
Top of the farm, at the top of Sheldon Hill,
Yeah.
down to Birch Street.
all the way down to Birch Street.
Right.
But there's
All
a
the way to-
doozy of a corner there. I had a close call with one time. Actually,
Yeah.
I
You
bumped, so
kinda
we had a
skid
little.
around.
Thank God, it wasn't
We
a
had a
bad
cousin that
accident.
was a good driver.
Yeah.
But what about? Weren't you? What if a car was coming up?
Well, there wasn't much
wasn't,
traffic
no.
then, especially with the snow.
Were you sure there wasn't? You weren't sure, so boy.
We took a chance. It was
Even when
always
I was-
Plow
at
back
night,
then. They
like-
didn't plow back then. They
They
used to roll the snow.
Yeah.
They didn't, heavy rollers. They didn't plow like
You remember the era of the rolling
yeah,
the snow?
Yeah. And then I remember the big plows too that plowed like 10 feet high.
Yeah, I know from a previous interview that yes, they didn't bother when there weren't a lot of cars.
No.
Down the downtown section, people had to get to work, and so they would plow with a horse-drawn wooden plow. They would plow the sidewalks before they would plow the streets.
Yeah, my grandfather showed me how they used to, he used to talk about how they used to have to oil the feet, clean the hoofs of the horses because they'd ball up.
With all the,
Right.
with the snow.
You know, they put the big spikes in the horseshoes. And
Yeah.
it was amazing. You know, he was delivering milk at 13 with the wagon and the
With
horse.
the horse and wagon.
'Cause he was born in 1900.
Yeah.
So,
Doing
so
a
that
lot.
era from the horse-drawn
Yeah.
deliveries and the horse-drawn, there were still horse-drawn vehicles and so on, to the modern era with the,
That's
From
right.
during the war. Gas was
Yeah.
low. He delivered with the horse and
so
buggy.
World War II,
Yeah.
for gas
Rationing.
rationing,
Yeah.
Thank God we missed that one.
delivering, had to go back to delivering horse and wagon. A lot of sacrifices were made during the
Oh,
war,
yeah.
during the war years,
sure
the rationing
was.
and so on, for the war effort. Some of the other things up by, you said, you walked here and there and everywhere. You used to walk up to Bartlett, Camp Bartlett, which was a
Oh,
hike.
we've done that,
Yes, yes.
And what would you do at Camp Bartlett?
Skate.
Leominster Sportsman's
Yeah,
Club now,
skate.
but you would skate.
Yeah.
Yeah, when my father would go get ice to put in the coolers
So-
to keep the milk.
So Camp Bartlett
yeah.
was where the source of the ice to keep
Right.
the.
Right.
So what can you tell us about that? Do you remember any of the cutting of the ice?
I have all the tools for the ice cutting. I remember when the farm was being sold, my dad had grabbed those.
Those were the tools.
Those were tools that were passed down. I guess they cut all their own ice
They
for the
cut
cooling.
blocks of ice.
Refrigeration wasn't
Hauled it
prevalent.
down.
Yeah.
Put sawdust
for
between it
refriger-
to protect it. And
Yeah, sawdust in between,
Right.
and I know there were other ice houses in Leominster, down by Bartlett. There was an ice house, and they used to literally cut the blocks of ice harvesting.
Yes,
The whole,
exactly.
The big thing.
They did their own.
They did their own ice harvesting, and then they would insulate it with the sawdust in the ice houses, and it would last through probably
Yeah. The summer months.
the summer months. And I don't know whether I know there were icemen that used to come around, and a number of the people that I've interviewed have mentioned that the iceman with the leather thing on his back would carry the big tongs, would carry the big block of ice.
We always got ice though every day, even when we were delivering milk. We'd go with the milk truck down to Leominster Ice.
Leominster Ice.
They'd come out with a 300-pound block, and we used to have to chip it and
it up.
put it on top of the
On top of
bottles.
the,
Yeah.
as we drove around,
Yeah.
and delivered.
So the Leominster, and that's still there, the Leominster ice.
Very much so.
company is still there and very active.
Yes.
And they make their ice now, no longer
Right.
with ice pond, but they
No.
you know, the machines.
Yeah, well, they were
make
doing
ice.
there wasn't a pond then either, when I was going.
Right.
Something was mentioned about, we mentioned the horse-drawn, but there was a very, very smart horse, apparently. Jeff, can you tell us
Sure.
something about
No,
this?
it's their brother.
Your,
That was Dusty, our oldest brother,
your oldest brother,
Eugene.
Eugene.
He used to patronize down on 3rd Street.
Once in a
Don't
while, he would
yeah.
go to a
was-
drinking establishment.
Exactly, on 3rd Street. And that horse would wait outside till he was ready to come home.
The horse would wait outside
Yeah.
the bar.
Yeah. And whether it was tied or not, that I don't know. But he would get up on the horse would come up and up Mechanic Street, stop at the light at Main and Mechanic Street, and proceed on home.
So it was a smart horse,
Yeah, it
and
was a
naturally the
smart-
horse knew the way back home, but this
yeah.
horse actually stopped at the traffic
At
light.
the traffic light.
And that's a family story that
Well, it has been brought up to my attention, and they confirmed it when I asked them. That I didn't know about the red light. That the horse was that sharp.
It was a circus horse, so she was a smart horse. Yeah.
the other things, downtown Leominster. Ladies, what do you remember about downtown Leominster? And I'll bet when the things you mention will trigger the memories of many other people in the audience who are viewing this program today. What are some of the things, when you did get downtown,
The Vogue.
the Vogue shop, which was a
yes.
woman's apparel shop,
Frankel's.
Frankel's,
And where did
And
you work?
Ames, the butter shop.
Yeah.
Ames. Was that near
think
where
it was
Merchants
Ames.
Bank used to be?
Right.
It's no longer Merchants Bank, it's Bank of America or something.
Yeah.
It's on the corner of the McGrath
Mechanic.
Mechanic Street. And I used to remember as a kid, when I, eventually, I didn't get out of my neighborhood too much in elementary school, but when I went to junior high and then high school and I would walk back home, I remember going by the Ames Butter and Egg store.
Right.
And there would be these big oranges,
Fruit.
Yeah.
and
Fruit
they looked so
stand.
good, and
Becre-
then
was it
like big
Becrellas?
tubs of peanut butter or something.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, and that was, I know right where, where the
Right.
bank is. Now there's
Yeah.
a parking lot there.
Right.
And
For the bank, yeah.
for the bank, and there is a bank on either side. And there used to be there was a big church.
Right, Methodist
The
church,
Methodist
wasn't it?
Church, which is now on Merriam Avenue.
Right.
But it moved, and I think the Methodist Church, during one of the hurricanes, the steeple
Right.
was
down.
damaged, that came down.
We used to go to the Boston Confectionery.
BC, the Boston
that was a
Confectionery
treat.
Store.
Big treat, you know.
And
shopping.
what would you, for a quarter, what could you get in those days? How things have
Oh,
changed.
goodness,
We
yes.
went to a movie.
Used to
you
have
got
the big
ice cream
banana
cone.
splits.
Get a big
Yeah.
banana split, you
Yeah.
could go to a,
Hardly anything.
yeah.
With a quarter, could go to the movies and get a popcorn, a candy bar, and a cold drink.
What were the movies in town then? What were the theaters? Now we don't have any theaters right
The
The
downtown.
Metropolitan.
Yeah, and the
We
Plymouth.
have
Plymouth.
the mall. The Metropolitan,
The Rialto.
the Rialto, which
Yeah.
is where the Leominster Recreation Center
Right.
used to be.
Yeah.
Now it's a church, and
Plymouth.
The Plymouth Theater.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were really movie palaces.
Oh, yes.
They were really movie palaces with the balcony and all the
remember that.
tapestries and
I
all
remember
that.
the Met.
Yeah,
was
tho-
I went to the Met.
tho- those are long
I remember
gone.
Milt Morin was the guy in the red coat
Yeah,
that
Milt.
worked there, that big.
Yeah, Milt.
And we were told
Cleveland
because we went
Browns.
to school with his sister, and it's like, don't mess with Milt.
No.
Don't, better behave at the movie.
Milt of the Cleveland,
Yeah.
first draft choice of the Cleveland Browns, professional football.
He was also at St. Cecilia.
St. Cecilia's, and I remember he was a little younger than I am in the Babe Ruth League. We played and so on. But I saw him after he became a professional one time at the rec center. And years later, there was a basketball game. Huge. John, he grew. He was a big kid, but I mean, he really, really grew. And that was before the era of steroids. That's another change from today. So it was all exercise and in his genes. You know, he was a big guy, and a great guy.
Yeah.
Bill, the Moran family. When did originally your family come to Leominster? When did originally? We had, from Canada.
It was mid-1870s.
The mid-1870s. And how did they get here? How did they get here?
Horse and buggy.
Horse and
Horse
wagon.
and buggy? Horse
Two
and-
guys came, the brothers. Their uncle David and
Grandfather.
Paul.
Paul. And why did they come from Canada? I mean, what was the reason? Why Canada's a beautiful place.
Well, their family up there, Mr. Charpentier told me, he called me and told me of two other uncles he has that they were brothers. There were big families, but it was all farms up there. They were dairy farmers up there. And probably work. There was work here.
There was work.
And they were handy. They were mechanical. I remember my grandfather he seemed awful mechanized for a guy, you know.
So, again, America being the land of opportunity, there was work, and Leominster in this area was a mill city. There were factories, and there
Right.
was good work in the factories.
He worked in millwright, as a millwright. When he got married, one was a millwright, and then the other brother was a machinist.
Now, what would a
That was-
millwright do? I know what a machine. My dad was a machinist.
Putting in
too.
pipes,
Pipes.
cutting, fitting the pipes, doing anything in the construction of
For the
building a
operation
factory.
of the
Right.
mill. Other members of your, let's give it a little more background. The original picture at the beginning, they showed this huge, were those all Richards at the pictures that were run? There was this picture at the very beginning in the collage of pictures, or the
Richards
series of pictures.
Antiques.
It was on a porch, and there must have been, I don't know, how many people?
1909.
1909.
Yeah.
The Turigny family has a website, and that picture was going around, and that was a 50th wedding anniversary of our great-great-grandparents, their great-grandparents.
So Richards and Turigny's?
Yes.
So those are the two,
Well, they married sisters, so
Sisters
there was a few Richards in those pictures.
and Richards in those pictures. And that's another change today. Today, then, families were big. And you needed a lot of hands, especially on a farm, and you need a lot of people to work. And there was something wonderful about having a big family. And now the families today are much smaller, very often. So that's another big change.
Yeah, we were just a small family considering what families were before, generations
Yeah.
before. We were just 4 children.
Just 4
in
children,
our family.
and there were many families at that time that were much larger than that.
Pepe's sisters and brothers, who was the oldest? I know there was in the 1890s the birth was, but
Aldia. She was the oldest.
Yeah, that was my godmother. She married Steve Valley.
I have to get a couple of things in before we come to the conclusion of this interview. I got the idea of this interview originally when I was at Don's Diner and I ran into Jeff. And we started talking, and Jeff said that he remembered flags on Richard's farm at the top of the hill, Sheldon's Hill, and then across the valley at Ken told me of Gove's farm. That area, there used to be flag, you could see across the valley, and
those two brothers.
the two brothers. Tell us about that, the waving the flags in those days. About what year would that be approximately?
Before they had phones.
Before they had phones, and the brothers would,
Wave a flag in the morning just to say we're
all okay.
You know,
everything's on.
and that was it. Yeah, I mean, you could see from the top of Gove Farm to our farm up here.
And people know at the Rice Hill up there, Gove Farm, people
Right.
are familiar where Gove Farm is, and where Richard's Farm on Elm Street, top of Sheldon Hill, and you could actually see across the valley, and they just say hello to each other before the days of the
Right.
telephones, which I thought was a very, very kind of, very beautiful kind of picture.
Well, it was quite a drive.
Yes, it was, yeah.
With a horse.
It was quite a haul, quite a drive for the horse, and a long, long walk.
Yeah.
A long walk. How many acres did they have then on the Richards farm, approximately? How much big is it? Is it smaller now than it?
I think we're sitting on maybe 17 acres from the original farm, but it had grown to like 77, or there was the farm below. They call the other farm is a piece that I live on.
Where the kennel is now?
Your dad must have bought.
No,
Down the
With
bottom.
Biscuit
down the
Hill.
bottom. Okay,
The hill.
I don't know when that was bought, but
okay.
I don't remember either.
that was something maybe your dad bought.
Yeah, he
That's
did.
separate.
Yeah.
In
From the
was-
Conrads.
probably in the
Yeah.
20s or.
And how many years did the Richard dairy farm operate, approximately?
Well, 1891, and
Jeez.
she sold it in 95.
Yeah.
1891 to
In 1995.
1995.
We were haying it, and
Still haying it. Was it the dairy operation done
No.
then?
oh no, the dairy stopped when.
Yeah, before
Oh.
that.
College, 70, early 70s,
In
maybe
the-
late
in the-
60s.
In the early 70s, but it was still a farm
As far as delivering milk,
delivering milk.
you know, but the dairy, there was dairy and we were selling our milk bulk.
Okay. Then, and I have to ask, was there one particular kind of cow that you used?
Holstein.
Holstein?
Holstein,
That was
yeah.
the Holstein? That information
but
from
the-
ladies who
That's
didn't.
right.
From
Hey,
ladies
you
who
knew
didn't.
that.
who
Always had some jerseys and
Yeah.
Guernseys
Always
to-
threw a couple.
To cream it up.
Yeah.
some jerseys in there and Guernseys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make it a richer milk, more creamy.
From ladies who didn't milk the cow.
That's right. We just listened and heard all
You
this.
listened and learned. You had, nearing the end of the interview, you had a large orchard up there too.
Yes.
And what happened to it?
With
Hurricane,
1938
yeah.
Hurricane of 1938,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is.
Destroyed all the
And
trees.
you remember?
Oh, yeah.
You remember
Yeah.
that?
Picking
Uprooted them
apples.
all.
Picking. Was
Picking
it?
apples.
Was it? Do you remember exactly where you were when that happened? Was it?
At night, yeah, we're upstairs in the
In the
bedroom.
house.
And
Terrifying
yes,
experience.
it was.
Terrifying.
Because the house was
wind,
moving.
yeah.
Yeah, and but at the top of the hill.
Right.
Wow.
Yes, and we were upstairs.
Scary.
Yeah, and then when I can imagine, well, I can't imagine what you saw when daylight came.
Oh, gosh, yes.
The devastation.
Yeah.
That has impressed so many people in their memories in Leominster, those who lived through the 38 hurricane. We
guess
whippersnappers here, we didn't. Ken and
Didn't
Jeff and
remember
I.
that.
I
we
guess
don't
all the
remember that.
relatives came up too and helped
yeah.
pick all the apples and what we
People
could
would come
save,
and just get them for
friends
nothing.
and
yeah.
relatives.
To conclude this interview, what I'm going to ask this question of Connie and Muriel. Nearing the end of this interview, what? And I'll touch upon it with Ken and Jeff also. Your fondest memory growing up. I know you have many, but what if you could condense it down to one of your fondest memories of growing up in Leominster?
In Leominster.
Connie.
Well, I can say it was a enjoyable life we had up there. We had plenty to eat, and we had trees. We'd climb the trees, cherry trees, eat all the cherries you wanted, or apples. And we were well taken care of. We enjoyed that. And then finally, well, then I met my husband, and we've been married for 60 years.
And you still live up
We live
Right,
next door to
next
the
door.
Original farm.
at the original farm, right
Yeah.
on the corner
On
there.
the right.
Okay. Muriel.
I don't think I realized my fondest memories till I married and moved away and realized what I moved away from. My children weren't able to see this every day and have this every day, what I grew up, like she said, climbing trees, sitting up. As soon as the apples get that big, we'd be up in a tree eating apples.
And when you say you moved away, to where did you?
When I got married and I moved, and we had moved to Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls.
Yeah,
New
so
York.
it wasn't a daily trip.
Yeah.
So, but they enjoyed coming home. When we'd come home on vacation, naturally,
farm.
that's what they remember. And it's too bad that they couldn't have that whole lifetime till they got married.
Yes.
But that's when I missed it. Up until then, it's just you just take it for granted what you have, you know.
So
but
often
we
we
had
take-
very, very good
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
on the farm.
Blessed.
Yeah, we were
Count our
blessed.
blessings.
Very.
So often we take for
Very.
granted what's close to
Exactly.
us. We don't count our blessings.
Exactly.
We should.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Well, I'm kind of a Leominster person anyways. Pretty much growing up in Leominster was an experience that, in our life, you know, our childhood was a little different, you know, and the winters, especially Christmas Eve at my grandfather's, that was really a special day for us, you know, as a child. And of course, this part of my life, raising my family and getting to work with my nephews and cousins, getting involved with them still in this side of the family, and, you know, just giving some back.
Yeah.
To the
volunteer,
town.
Yeah. And that comes up, and I know you folks, family and people in the viewing audience, family is so important in a person's life. I mean, the foundation of society. So, and that has changed today. The family structure is changing today, and it's sad, but it'll come back. It'll come back.
Yeah, there's a few of the Leominster. My cousin Butch, who we haven't spoke about, and my brother Kevin, that was also on the farm with us, and they live out of town, and they have some good stories with us.
Yeah. But traditional family values are the foundation of society. Ken, I had your daughter. I taught in Lunenburg.
Right.
Yeah. And I had Jeff's in religious ed. I had the boys. They're
grown up. The last one's a junior in college.
the junior in college. And I think I had them, but it's been my memory sometimes.
Jake and Josh.
Jake and Josh, and I think, did I have them both? I know
Yes.
that, both of them, and your daughter,
Leanne.
and I didn't have your son,
No, KJ. He's
KJ.
in L.A.
L.A. So I mean, time passes and all these kids grow up. Ken, your fondest memory?
I think just growing up in that atmosphere, the farm, and the family, you know, Uncle Paul up this way, Uncle Gene, Aunt Rita, Meme and Pepe,
Yeah.
and then all my younger cousins.
Yeah.
You know,
He was our
and
guy.
working, and you know, and working on the farm. It taught you a whole different. You're not afraid to work. Once you work on a farm,
You're not afraid
you
to
can do anything. You know, everything else is easy.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's so true, because you have to
Yeah.
be a jack of all trades. You have to do everything on the farm, because you're away from
Right.
easy access to everything else. You've got to do things for you.
It was a good life.
Good life. Good life. The barn that's no longer there, and the house which is there, Richard's Dairy Farm at the top. The barn was a landmark. Do you have any stories about the barn?
Oh, getting caught smoking. My cousin Butch and I were up there one day, and Uncle Gene came in and said, "What are you guys doing?" You know, we had taken a couple of his L&Ms, and we were on top of 10,000 bales of hay. Well, we got it that day, all the way down the driveway.
Smoking on top of 10,000 bales of
Oh,
hay. That would have been a fire that lit up the whole.
Oh, and there's
region.
shavings.
Shavings.
I mean, how many? We have stories about shavings. When they got shavings, and nothing was easy. Everything was the hard way.
You know, the truck would dump it. We had to shovel everything down in the trough and then put it in baskets. And you know, when you behind the cows,
Yeah.
slopped them, put it in the gutter,
Right?
and then put clean shavings twice, 2 or 3 times a day.
Hard work.
Oh.
Hard work.
Yep.
But it didn't hurt. Hard work
No.
doesn't hurt
No.
anyone.
No.
No, it sure did.
And I can tell that you miss the farm life, you know, from what you've said.
It was a good life.
It was a good life.
We had
Very
good
close
times.
family.
Very good times.
Yeah, very close family.
Very close family.
Yeah.
And just to conclude the interview, at the height of the farm with dairy business, those mainly Holstein, some Guernseys, and
Jerseys.
for the cream.
Right.
How many cows at the
50 to 60.
50 to 60? Would we be able, on March 28th, 2008, find a single cow, dairy cow, in Leominster? Do you think we could? Would we be able to find even one?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to one. Not a one. So,
I mean, we drive by farms, and it's like, to us, it's like,
Yeah.
people look at you like,
Go
wow.
home week.
Quick,
Well-
open the window.
that
It's
smell,
kinda crazy, but-
that hay smell, I've read scientifically with the mixture, that's a very, I'm not talking just the manure, that smell of not chicken manure,
Yeah, no.
Right.
cow manure in a farm, that smell is
Supposed to be healthy.
is a healthy and a very, it's actually a sweet smell, the smell of that new mown hay. It's,
You can edit this story out, but I can remember walking in high school. I went to St. Bernard's. I can remember walking home, and my Uncle Gene or whoever would be spreading manure in the lower field, where Jeff lives now, and in the heel of your shoe, the next day at school, people saying, "What's that smell?"
and
That's
You know, oh God, have to go and clean it out. I can remember that. They weren't. Other people weren't used to that. You know.
right, not from that.
Yeah.
Embarrassing moment.
Yeah.
But an embarrassing moment, but nothing to be embarrassed about. Well, I want to thank all of you folks for this interview. I want to thank Connie, and I want to thank Muriel, and I want to thank Jeff, and I want to thank Ken. And I also want to thank, as always, Kyle Pimarini, Jack Sully, Dennis Cormier, Tina Pimarini, and our camera folks today, Mike Gallagher and Josh Sandersky. And as always, I want to thank you, the LATV viewing audience. Thank you very much for tuning in to Neighborhood Snapshot. Thank you very much.